Every week we try to avoid all this technical challenge,
Yes.
but sometimes things just happen. So I'm glad that you guys are here with us, and thank you so much. So in the past sessions, we talk about your salaries into like your real salary, and then we talk about real estate in different countries. And today's session, we're going to talk about generational wealth. If you have children, or if you have parents who have like wealth to plant to pass on to you, then we are going to talk about how people can keep their wealth or how people lose their wealth over the generations. But before we start, if this is your first time, I am Yasi, the creator behind Fast Track. So I have a podcast. It's called Fast Track Podcast, where I invite experts and people from different domains come to become my guests and talk about their personal experiences. We talk about entrepreneurship, money, and career. And with me today is Matthias Richter. Always on Wednesday, we have this Fast Track Money session. So we talk about everything about money. Matthias Richter is behind the blog platform. It's called Financial Imagineer, where he creates lots of valuable content and share his personal experience with you, that how you can imagineer your life financially. So today we also have, I guess, our usual audience, like the Rainmaker, Dan the Wise, and a few other followers. And if you're new here, please join the conversation. And if you're already here with us in the past, please keep the conversation going. So next, let me pass it to Matthias Richter. So what's the topic?
Okay, today we are talking about generational wealth. This is something very close to my heart because I have helped people before to bridge the gap between generations. I have seen how it was done very nicely. I have also seen how it was done very bad. And maybe before we get into this topic, the Chinese, they have a saying. In Chinese, it's called Fu Buguo Sandai. It means like wealth doesn't last for 3 generations. That's why we chose the title today, to say that how to maybe make wealth last longer. This saying we also have in other cultures. So for instance, in the US, we have the same thing. It's called shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. And in Japan, they call it rice paddies to rice paddies in 3 generations. So it's the same concept. And usually the thing behind it is there is one generation that builds the wealth, the second generation that slowly spends or maintains the wealth, and the third one that has to start again from scratch because nothing is left. And this is like a vicious cycle in a way. And of course, like first you have to build the wealth or have the wealth. But once you have that, there's so many things that can go wrong. And on the other side, there are a few families that manage to do this very nicely. We can also tap into these examples later today. You maybe know the Rockefeller family, or in Switzerland, we have the family around Victorinox, who all they pass things on over generations. And then that's called generational wealth that can actually survive over a longer period of time, and that the generations to come can profit from that. Other people call it building a legacy. And there's many things around that. So if you have any questions today, I have helped wealthy people in Asia with questions around that. I have seen the one and the other case myself. So please feel free to hit the comment section. I will see it live and can help you to understand things better eventually.
And why do you think in all these cultures there are similar sayings implying that wealth cannot last for more than 3 generations?
Yeah, I think this is an intercultural problem. It's something more like the greater human issue that is at play here. You have usually a first generation that really builds up the wealth. They go through a lot of hardship. They struggle. If you want to build wealth, usually it comes at the cost, which is you have to really sacrifice certain things. You have to work hard. And later, the people who build something, they know how painful it was. And eventually they want to avoid that the next generation go through the same hardships. So they make it actually easier for the generations to come. And these people usually don't feel or see how wealth is built. And for them, it's just something that has been there anyway. And then there's no like mindset transfer or transfer of values for a majority. I don't say for everyone, but for a majority of people. And then wealth evaporates again back to the abyss, and maybe some other people can pick it up, which is also good. Like we have the like people meritocracy, you call it, like people that merit it, that work hard, they deserve to get wealthy. And so that should be like that in a way. Like if you don't have the things to keep the wealth in your family, then why should you, right? And another thing is very interesting, cross-cultural. You have different economies that are at different stages. So let's say in Europe, you have a lot of old wealth. You have a lot of families that had this problem before. But let's say if you go to China, most wealth is still in the first generation. Maybe slowly now it gets passed to the second generation. But in Asia, it's like delayed, like maybe one generation. And who knows how it will look like in 50 years from now. So it's like you can also see it with countries like the Roman empires. The biggest wealth was amassed shortly before its fall. So you get wealthier until you get so spoiled and happy with what you have that you don't care about the whole thing behind it, and then you lose it eventually.
Wait, I have to highlight this frame did not capture. Today I'm wearing the Financial Imagineer t-shirt.
Awesome, yeah.
And this you can order it on Financial Imagineer website, and you can order all kinds of merchandise, which is pretty fun.
I have added 2 new designs recently, but I haven't get as creative as I wanted to get there. So on my website, click on the merchandise shop link on top, and you see a lot of designs.
I think there will be more like a funny sentences and the funny hashtags coming out right soon.
Yeah, I have way too many ideas. So
hashtag generational wealth.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And I want to ask you, do you see, since you served clients in Asia and also you're from Europe, do you see there's a difference in attitude? Like parents in Asia tend to be more like, oh, I want to save as much as possible, accumulate as much wealth as possible, and pass it on to my children so they don't have to suffer what I have suffered. Or in Europe, maybe they were more independent, like, okay, my children can make their own money, they don't need my support. Or you see similarities, like they all want to pass some wealth to their children.
Overall, I think it's a lot of similarities. But if you look at the cultural differences, of course, there are things that are slightly different. I think in Asia, the next generation is not so much forced to leave the family house, right? A lot of people live together, multi-generational living. And then some people, they grow into their 30s, 40s, and they never had to actually help themselves to earn a living, right? So it's something that is maybe different in Europe. Here, people are forced out of the house and so forth. But I have also seen very good examples in Asia, where the next generation wanted to join the company of the father. And the father was very smart. He said, well, yes, son, you are allowed to join the company, but first, you should go outside and seek outside work to gain experience. Number one, go out, learn experience, learn something else, right? And then with that experience, you may come back, but number two, I will not be the hiring officer as your father. Number three, you're not allowed to tell anyone in the company you are my son. Number four, you have to go through the normal HR process to get hired. And that person actually went through all that, got the job eventually. And then for 2 years, he was not allowed to say anything who he is. And he actually had to earn the respect of all the other people. And later on, when he really earned the respect of the management and all the others, at one day, they announced that he is actually the son of the owner. And of course, he had to go to a factory in the south of Taiwan, not in the north. So there was a separation that people don't know each other. And that was a really good example, right?
Yeah.
And there's also other examples where next generation goes in. Usually with generational wealth, you have a family business or you have a bigger setup. And there's nothing more turning off than if the next generation comes in, maybe in their 20s, believing that they can run the whole thing without any experience, right? And sometimes they piss off and let actually the management group disappear. Like they actually get rid of a lot of good people by mismanaging that.
Right.
But I think for generational wealth, I think the essence here is actually, first, somebody has to build wealth. And then once it's built, some people say is if you have won the lottery, quit playing, you have to diversify and make like a pivot into something else. And that means most of wealth is actually created bigger wealth is created with the family companies or special events. And then once you reach a certain level, you probably have to sell, diversify, buy other things, get into different assets. And then I think the crucial part will be to slowly hand over to the next generation. And that one is done differently, I think, in different places.
What is exactly the difference between personal wealth and generational wealth?
I think personal wealth is somebody gets very wealthy and usually doesn't really think more about that, right? So you can have 1 million, 10 million, maybe you have 100 million or more, but as long as you don't really think about what is the purpose of this wealth creation, right? Usually people in the FIRE community, for instance, the financial independence community, they think, yeah, wealth should be here so I can retire. And then the next question is, so what's next? What now? What to do next? If you actually want to do something else with that money, or later, if you plan beyond yourself, if your money has to do something for you, or your estate or your company, you can think like more, and you have to plan beyond your own life. So generational wealth will be if you actually set in place a plan to protect whatever you have built to last longer than you live. And that can be, sorry.
I think it's a very interesting topic because many people think generational wealth, they think millions, right? 10 millions, 20 millions, or several millions. But generational wealth can be as little as like 10,000, 50,000, 100,000.
It can be anything, yeah.
Yeah. And we talk about couple finance in the past, how you can manage this together to be more efficient. But then when you talk about generational wealth, if the parents plan to pass the wealth to the children, maybe it's better they somehow discuss about it, like talk about it, because I know there will be taxes involved. If they own properties, maybe if they didn't plan a handover, they have to sell it when the market tanked, like wrong time. Could be interesting to have this conversation going with parents or children.
It's a must. The earlier you start teaching the next generation, the better. And teaching also involves handing over responsibility. And there, I always say it's better if you lose $10,000 than if you lose 100,000 or $1 million. If you have that kind of money in the family, if it's passed on, you have to be super careful, right? Because if you pass on nothing, and then at one point, when the next generation is 40 years old, you pass on 10 million. What if they just lose it all? You make actually mistakes more enhanced if you have more money. But if you make that mistake with 10,000, you hopefully can learn from that and take it from there. So I think that's why I start early. Number two, you said taxes and estate planning. In some places, if you have a family business, it could be the problem could be very stupid that actually the patron or whoever built the family business owns all the shares. And in some places, what if that person passes away? There will be eventually estate taxes. In some countries, you have to pay like 20-30%, even inside the family.
Yeah.
And let's say now your company is 80% of your total wealth cake, and that thing is valued at 100 million. Yeah, guess what? You have to pay 20-30 million to the government. And if you don't have that kind of petty cash on the side, I mean, it sounds very big, right? But the same concept can be applied for smaller numbers. if you don't have that kind of money, you have to sell, you have to unwind. And if you have to unwind in a position where the one who built everything actually passes away, just in business, everyone will smell the blood, and they will come and try to buy the pieces over for bargain prices, and it will be ugly and bad and not good. So, and that can be avoided by, for instance, passing on earlier, right? You don't have to wait until you die to pass on certain things. And in some countries, you have certain thresholds, how much you can pass every year. So if you start early enough to pass on year by year, you can actually break these regulations, right? Another thing is having a life insurance. Some people have life insurance on their total wealth, which could be very helpful because life insurance is tax-free and it can be used to insure the key man risk. And if you get the life insurance payout as the family to survive the person who passed, they can use that money to pay the taxes and maintain the business. In the best case, they even can use this money to pay someone a salary and incentive to actually run and manage the business. Because second generation, yes, they own it, but they may not be most suitable to run the business going forward. Maybe that's really the father or whoever built that, right? It could be the mom. So there is so many things you plan. Another thing, teach your values and your mission. I mean, if you build a business, I have met a lot of people that are very proud of how many people they actually could employ. And they see it like a giving back to the community kind of thing, right? If you have 20,000 employees, you have to provide for all of them. If you don't plan this carefully, you probably put 20,000 families at risk. Yeah, if you pass away, they don't have the job anymore, right?
So, and when do you think a family should start generational wealth planning? Let's say there are two scenarios I'm thinking. One is the ones who have young children who already built wealth, and the other one is the older parents who built wealth and have adult children. Maybe they're the same, just like 10 years later, 20 years later.
I think if you haven't started, no matter where you are, you should start now. I think right now is the correct answer to your question, no matter where you are, if you didn't start yet. Because in some places, you also say that creating generational wealth cannot be done in one generation, right? Maybe one generation has to pay off debt or has to work very hard and have to make ends meet. The second generation maybe can get a better education, get a better job, save more, earn more. And then maybe the third generation will have eventually freedom from some things because the other two generations prepared, right? So it's like a multi-generational thing. If you are lucky and one generation makes like a head start or like a big move forward, then it's a different thing. Then the problem will be education on finances. The moment you have the time, anyone should teach their offspring about money, about wealth, because this is like, I say it in a very stupid way, maybe. It's like playing Monopoly, always going over start and hoping to survive with the 2,000 you get while all the other people in the game buy the real estate and do the things. And then whenever you jump on the field, you get rid of your money again, right? So you have to understand the rules of the game to actually compete. That's number one, right? And if it comes to building wealth, just understand the mechanics. And if you do that, and if you pass that on to the next generation, make sure they also understand it, then you have suddenly much longer of a time frame than 20, 50, or even 100 years, right? The compounding can do miracles here. But if you actually miss this education part, it just needs, it's like in a chain. A chain is only as strong as the weakest link in the chain. If one of the links, usually in families, you may have 20 members that are very okay, and one of them is greedy or want to have more, and they start to fight. They have like lawsuits. I have heard stories in Taiwan. There was a case where like the sons, they start to kill each other because they wanted to have more. Yes, that was a very big story like 2-3 years ago. And there was also like public listed company like Offspring. Right, then the greediness can destroy a legacy in one stupid moment. And for generational wealth, it's very important that you understand maybe the motivation behind why it was built, what was the why of the father, right? Of course, maybe he was just lucky to build this thing, but maybe he had a dream, right? And to keep this dream going downwards and pass it on, that's something great. And in Switzerland, you have, for instance, the family behind Roche, right? They are also many generations into the game, and if they have shares that have the voting rights, but they also sold some shares, but they control the voting rights of the company. In Victorinox, I think they are the 7th generation at the moment. Rockefeller family, they have a family foundation trust with more than 200 members that are entitled to get benefits from it. And they have to fight internally and apply for, let's say, I want to have a scholarship, I want to do this, I want to do that. And then you have to go to your uncles or the relatives in the family to figure out whether you can actually do
like a business and organization within the family.
Correct. And so it's very organized. And well, if you start that, if you have, you cannot start this kind of structure, of course, if you have less money, but you can definitely start building generational wealth at any point where you are now. That's how it happens, right? If you never think about it, it will not happen. And also, think, how about Swatch? Heineken family, correct.
Also Heineken family as well in the Netherlands. There was one point you mentioned about the compound. It's very interesting because today I just wrote this article. And you see, if you invest $100 with 7% return, just right at the beginning, you put $100, you do not do anything. On average, if it's the 7%, 10 years later, it's about twice. And then 20 years later, it's about close to 4 times. And then 30 years later, I think it's 7.6 times. But imagine if we are 30 plus, and then at most you can invest is 30, 40 years, right? But you have to enjoy life. Maybe you die tomorrow. So you have to evaluate like what is the investment horizon. But if you combine the first generation with the second generation with the third generation, then you always keep like a portion of the money within the company. It can do miracles within 50, 60 years, 2 generations. Yes. This is so powerful. I mean, this can be 20 times or 30 times return.
And a lot of people, they don't do that, right? So, and that's why when the old people pass away, there is eventually something will be passed on, an inheritance is received. But if you don't have the values, the mindset, or the education behind it, who knows, right? It's like rolling the dice. You don't know what's going to happen. Could be good, could be bad, but it's pure luck eventually, right?
Yeah.
But if you structure something, teach the kids to do something, you can avoid some of the pitfalls. And eventually, if you do it right, you may be the grandfather or the great grandfather later. The whole family talks about. It could be like the big story.
I love the story you mentioned in the previous live session that you gave interest to your son. So when they deposit the money with you, and then you give them, I don't know how many percent, whatever percentage it is. And then when he brings the money to the bank, they don't give him as much as interest. Yeah. And then he was like complaining, what the hell? I was like, I might as well deposit my money with my dad. That was funny.
Yeah, there was a 7-year-old scolding a bank clerk for not even giving 1% on his deposit. Yep. And of course, right, I think for kids, it's something hard. You don't want to wait 1 year to see like 0.25% compounding in your account. That's bloody boring. You have to show this effect on a weekly basis to them to let them get a taste of the goodness, right? You cannot just let them wait. That's not good. That's actually counterproductive, because if they wait for like 3 years, that sucks. Yeah. If you're at that age, you don't have the patience, right?
Yes. For average person, if they don't have like 10, 20, 100 million or family business, how can one start planning generation wealth? Imagine if they have extra, savings at the side.
Maybe the first important thing is to understand what the kids want, right? So you can actually plan this, but your kids will not want this or don't like it, right? So you have to see what is the kids' values. see where you stand, and then you can actually tell them what you have in mind. And with education and understanding each other, a lot of it can be done. The next step would be to putting it in writing, like you write a will, you write something there. And if you have more wealth, you can start to create maybe a company, or you can have a family fund. And then if you have even more wealth, it could be a trust set up or a foundation, and so forth. Like a family office, you could do at the end, who has all the solutions inside, and then the whole thing becomes a thing that runs on its own. But then some kids may be deprived, right? There's also the saying that he's a trust fund baby or something, right? There's like the people, they are,
yes,
asset rich, but cash poor. They have a lot, but they are not allowed to use it. And that could also be, some people are very unhappy with that. That's why I say, listen to your kids. Don't just plan over their head. They also have plans with their lives. But if you do something like that, some people, they plan, if you plan for 3 generations, you can plan for certain things not to be distributed for the next one. You pass it on further, right? And then the compounding has even more value eventually.
Yeah, imagine 7% compounding for 100 years. It's
yes. Well, the main point eventually is, yes, family generational wealth. Your family's generational wealth can start with you. You can do the first step. And if you have some wealth in the family, if you haven't given a thought yet, it's the best moment to start now to think about it, because life is uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen, right? And there's also a saying about hard times create strong people. But strong people create good times. Good times create weak people, and weak people again create hard times. And then the loop closes, right? So it depends. And if you understand that and pass it on as a value, and then maybe the offspring will also understand why that's the case.
Yeah, I think everything comes down to personal finance, like education. You have to understand it, learn it, and then you can influence your family, and it also benefits your offsprings. And now let's open the floor for questions. If any of our audience have any questions to Matthias, to, I don't know, anything related to generational wealth, related to investing, related to anything money.
Now, please hit the comments if you have anything.
I didn't tell you that I'm going to have a glass of wine. Otherwise, we can do this wine talk.
Yeah, once the temperatures are getting warmer, we should have beer also. Okay, Popeye. Hi, Popeye. As difficult as it may be for folks that barely have enough to survive, it's so important to save even a little bit for the future. If you're lucky enough not to spend it, and you instruct your kids, then your future, Yes, it is slow, but as you said, yes. Yeah, it's if some people are like in a downward spiral over generations, right? It's like everyone had hard lives, and then you think that's life, right? I think money has a lot to do with the mindset and what you learn as a kid. And I think if you want to break this kind of loop, the best thing you can do is to talk about how to be different, or to start with yourself, break this downward spiral by becoming different, changing your mindset. And a simple thing is usually try to control what you can control, especially now during this Corona situation. Some people, they lose completely they are afraid of everything, right? But there's no need to be afraid of something you cannot influence. And I think the same thing with money. Try to focus on what you can control, and education to pass on to the next generation is the first thing you can do, changing the mindset. Some people always talk about money is bad, money has a bad influence. If you start to turn this around and say, yes, we're going to start and see where we go and show it to the kids, you build a good foundation for generational wealth eventually.
Using money as a tool to chase your dreams or to
have a better life.
Have a better life. Use it as a tool. Do not see it as something negative, So if there's no more questions from our audience, Then we thank you so much for being here, be with us, asking questions, commenting. We really appreciate you. And as usual, we will come back next Wednesday.
Yeah, and next Wednesday we have a fun topic. We have a very, very fun topic. A lot of people now, you just saw what happens with Bitcoin and other things. So next week we're going to talk about inflation. So once you build your wealth, how is inflation stealing your wealth eventually again? I have a very nice piece of money here. Let me show this.
So you should show next episode. Okay, now you're.
I will show that again. Don't worry. This is my favorite bill. Have you ever seen a centatrillionaire? I call myself centatrillionaire, but it's in Zimbabwe money. So, yeah. Inflation. Okay, Popeye asked also any good books to recommend for. I think a simple book is probably Poor Dad, Rich Dad, where the Robert Kiyosaki, he actually shares how he got influenced by a poor dad mindset and how he got influenced by the rich dad mindset. I think this is like very good to start with, but it doesn't really cover a lot of advanced stuff. And if you have kids, Kiyosaki even has a book about money for children, which is quite interesting. But the Poor Dad, Rich Dad, I think that covers a lot already.
Okay, I got 3 books for you.
Okay, awesome.
Which I really like. There are a lot of books that are very, very great out there. It depends on how much you know. I think the one that's interesting, talk about like a generational wealth, is this like The Millionaire Next Door, recommended by Matthias Richter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Endorsed.
Inside the book, it talks about how average millionaires, they actually, you don't see them as millionaires. Also talk about how people pass their wealth to their next generation, how the spoiled kids are expecting receiving so much money from parents and they do not make a lot in their own life. So that one is interesting. I think this one is also interesting. It's from Tony Robbins, is the Money Master the Game, 7 Simple Steps to Financial Freedom. It's really thick but easy to read and mostly US focused, but it's the principles applies. And then last book recommended by Matthias Richter as well. This book is Your Money, Your Life.
Oh yeah, that one is great. Yeah,
that's
really great.
I think not only for adults, not only
that's also for teenagers.
Yeah,
teenagers,
for everybody.
It's when you're at the beginning of your own life. This is a wonderful read.
This one. So I guess today's session is coming to the end. If you want,
you can find the book links also on my website. I have a book recommendation site there, and you can read some intros and the links for the books. Sorry.
And we appreciate you today. If you want to learn more about money skills, information about manage your money, come to our Wednesday YouTube live session at 7 p.m. CET time. Or you can read more articles on this topic on fasttrack.life or financial-imagineer.com. Or you can learn from our money course, which the link is in the description below. Everything together, 6 weeks, we will teach you everything you need to know, from money mindset to money habits to investment, to build a FU system that you can achieve financial freedom. So we will be more effective. So it depends on how you want to learn it. Lots of free resources online. And thank you so much for being here and hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Bye-bye.